This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Hi, welcome to another edition of Kal's Corner here on the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. And our executive producer, of course, is the one and only Rob McConnell. Welcome to tonight's show. Now, before we begin, I'd like to spend this first break talking about the tragic shooting in Las Vegas. We're going to cover it briefly and talk about how it is disgusting and predictable that the politicians who are busy running the U.S. government and country into the ground. America is polarized politically, and deservedly so, because most Americans don't support either political party anymore. Most Americans did not want either candidate in the last election. And even though Hillary Clinton got more votes than Donald Trump, that's irrelevant for Hillary Clinton supporters because America has never been a majority system. It has always been an electoral college system. And thank God it is, because if it were not, California and New York and Florida and Texas would basically determine everything relevant in the country. So at least by having an electoral system, the electoral college system have yet to come up with a viable alternative that would work. As they complain every time their candidate loses. They don't complain about when their candidate wins, of course. Until there is a better system, there isn't. So let's talk about what happened. First of all, my heartfelt condolences and sympathies go out to the victims and the families and friends and fellow Americans of what happened. What happened is terrible and tragic and should hopefully not happen again. But America, unfortunately, for worse, has mass shootings. What causes the mass shootings are all over the map. There's no single pattern. What you have to do is you have to take each individual case on its own merits or lack of, and then decide from there. Now, there is a stereotype of a mass shooter is perpetuated by the left-wing la-la liberal media, and shame on them for lying to the world about this. They'd like you to believe that the crazed lone gunman is some Southern Confederate sympathizer, some right-wing nut or Republican or some Yahoo type, and that's not even the case. If you look at the shooters, these sickos who have committed mass murder over the decades, and it goes back decades, you'll find that the majority of them were not members of the NRA. They were not Republicans. They were so-called liberals or progressives or Democrats. And that's not to say that Democrats are busy shooting people. Again, it's about the individual. But once again, disgustingly and predictably, we have those sick politicians out there, ever the opportunists, who are trying to politicize this event to push their own pet peeve agenda. Now, if you believe the propaganda of the Democrats, and you'd be a fool to do that, the myth is that the Democrats are the political party that believes in strict gun control. They're the so-called sane ones. It's the Republicans and the Yahoos that have an insane approach to gun control. And it's not that simple, folks. Nothing is ever that simple, especially in convoluted Washington, D.C. I'll be honest with you. I actually hoped that since marijuana is now legal in Washington, D.C., I hoped that that would actually improve the performance of our legislators. So either they're not smoking pot, and they should, or It just doesn't matter. They're eternally sick, and the answer is to have a viable third-party system, because both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, let's be brutally blunt about this, have failed the American people. If they had not failed the American people, we wouldn't have the polarization that we do today, and the country would not be $20 trillion in debt. Now, America is the only superpower on the planet, but it's $20 trillion in debt, which means it's really screwed up. So back to the issue of this shooting. The Democrats had everything going for them when Barack Obama was in power. The Democrats stood up there after Sandy Hook and other mass shootings and said how they were going to ram through gun control. And then what did the Democrats do after they finished their spotlight sound? They cowered. Just enough Democrats refused to cast their votes to rein in gun laws. So I don't respect somebody who sits there and beats their chest and says, I'm going to do this, we need to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then they turn around and do nothing when it comes time to vote because they're more concerned about getting elected or reelected in the case of the Democrats than doing what's right. This is the kind of game, that sick game that the Democrats have played. Now, I must tell you, I'm not a Democrat. I don't support them. I stopped supporting them in the 1990s during the second tenure of Bill Clinton's 2-term in office. And I've never been a Republican. So I don't support either party. Instead, if I support a politician, it's on a case-to-case basis. That's it. We'll be back in a moment after this commercial break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Is it science or is it magic? Once a magical thing has been scientifically proven, is it no longer magic? Or is magic simply the science of tomorrow? Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on The Science of Magic, a a syndicated radio program dedicated to combining the science and magic of today's dynamic and controversial topics to co-create new solutions. By triangulating information from today's leading experts from the scientific and magical fields, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truths you won't find anywhere else. Join us daily on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview the share thoughts with the amazing guests from both science and magic. The resulting knowledge is unprecedented. As a gift to you, the listener, past episodes can be accessed on our website free of charge at thescienceofmagic.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Welcome back to segment 2 of the Kal's Corner radio show here on the X Zone Radio Broadcast Network. Our host, or rather our executive producer, is the legendary Rob McConnell. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. So as we were talking about the Republicans and the Democrats, every time there is a mass shooting, you can count on one thing. Place a bet in Las Vegas, ironically, if you want to win some money in a morbid cause. There will be politicians who will try to politicize what has happened. They'll sit there and cry crocodile tears. They don't really care about the issue of what happened. They care about furthering an agenda. In the case of the Democrats, a lot of them want to take your weapons away. That's a fact. In fact, most governments don't like their citizens to have guns. And in the case of the United States, the population of America has at least 3 times the number of weapons as its own military does. Depending on where you go, as many as 90% of the people are armed. So you have politicians who like to politicize things, and every time there's a mass shooting, gun control comes to the front. Now, on the other hand, you have Yahoo types, or whatever types you want to call them. I just call them unreasonable people, who don't want any restrictions on gun control, and that's wrong. But let's put some things in perspective here. First of all, the issue is not the guns, okay? Think about the logic here and pull the emotion out of this problem. And I've reported on this many, many times, and I'm not the only one to hold this view. I don't even claim that what I'm about to tell you is original. It's just my opinion, and I think I can defend it logically and factually. Guns don't kill people. People use guns to kill people. In Great Britain, where there are very tight, strict gun control laws, they use knives. So when somebody wants to kill somebody, they find a way to get it done. Now, guns make it easy because it was a big technological breakthrough a long time ago. And of course, a nuclear bomb makes it as easy as it gets, and you can kill many people. You can wipe out the whole planet. So when somebody tells you guns kill people, I feel like slapping them, and I'm not a violent person, because guns don't kill people. That kind of argument is plain stupid. And I'll tell you why. It takes the responsibility away from the guilty party. Now, let's say somebody robs a bank. Is it the bank's fault? No. It's the guy who robbed the bank. If somebody hits somebody, just attacks them and beats them up, is it the victim's fault? No. It's the guy who hit him. But yet when it comes to guns, it's not the gun's fault. They always say it's the gun's fault, not the person's fault, as if there's no responsibility there at all. And that is what I call the retarded liberal law media's approach and the Democrats' approach to this subject. they start off with a whole faulty promise that the gun is the fault. It's not. It's the people. Now let's talk about people. Let's talk about something that the gun control advocates totally ignore, and they're Democrats. Chicago. The city of Chicago has been the murder capital of the United States for many years now. There's nothing to be proud of that. The nation as a whole should be ashamed, and the people who have run Chicago into the ground, and guess what party controls that? The Democrats. They should be ashamed. In fact, they should all resign and find someone who can get the job done right. Now, if you look at the fact that Chicago is the murder capital of the entire country for many years running, look at the specifics of those shootings. They're not mass shootings except in the total number. It's one person killed here, maybe 10 here over a weekend. It's blacks killing blacks. It's not Yahoo, white, racist, supremacist, Republicans, Confederate flag-waving Yahoo types killing anybody. It's brothers killing brothers, as the blacks like to call themselves, bro on bro, black on black. But do you see any Democrats out there saying we have to stop this? No, they don't talk about that because they don't want to explain why it is that blacks are killing blacks. Because it gets a little dicey there, and you can be accused of being a racist, just like people have accused supporters or critics of Barack Obama for being racist if they dare to criticize, even when they're right, what he's done. So in Chicago, where most people are being killed by handguns, which are illegally purchased, so laws don't matter, and Chicago has very strict gun control laws, but they don't matter. Criminals find ways to get around the laws because they don't care to respect and obey the laws. They're criminals, duh, hello. It's blacks killing blacks using pistols that are bought on the illegal black market, as they call it. They're not legally purchased over the counter and registered with a background check, yada, 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 because a criminal or member of a gang is not going to bother with those steps. Now, regarding gun control, I will tell you that I agree personally that there should be some changes to the laws. I have never supported the idea that you can just go to a used gun fair in some open field under some tents, buy a gun, and walk away and nobody knows the difference. You don't even have to register it. I think that's wrong. I think all guns should be registered. I think there should be universal background checks on everybody, a single standard that all the states have to adhere to. And that, of course, must be done by the federal government. The Democrats had a chance to make that a law, but the last time they were beating their chests over gun control issues, and they said they were going to do something, and President Obama shed tears over it, they did nothing because there was an election, and they were moral cowards. So I believe, again, that there should be universal background checks. In fact, in my ideal, if I could do this, I would have what's called smart ammo. Basically, it would work like this. You would fire your gun when you got it. That bullet would then be kept with the FBI, and the ballistic attributes of that bullet would be on file. So that the moment that gun was used in a crime to kill anybody, they knew immediately who it belonged to. They have smart ammo. In fact, I believe in smart trigger locks for weapons, biometrically driven, meaning if I own a gun and I'm the only one who's authorized to use it, if I have a biometrically activated trigger lock, if my gun is ever stolen or taken from me in self-defense, it'll be useless to the other person. All he can do is throw it at me because he won't be able to fire the weapon because he doesn't have my fingerprints. And we know that the biometric technique works. It works on your smartphone. Just ask Apple. They put it there years ago ahead of everybody. So I believe in that stuff because the technology is there to prevent accidental deaths. And that destroys one of the arguments that gun control advocates say. They say, well, look at the number of children who are killed every year through accidentally picking up daddy's gun and blowing their head off. Well, whose fault is it? Is it the kids or is it daddy's for not locking it up or keeping it loaded? you'll find that in almost 100% of those tragic cases, and they are absolutely just gut-wrenching and terrible, you will see that daddy didn't take proper precautions. Now, I must give credit to my own father, Calvin Korff, for raising me around guns and doing it responsibly in the right way. He started me out with toy guns, and then he saw that I liked them, okay, like a lot of boys do. Then he graduated me to a BB gun, and then a 22. And I remember I was so excited to get a 22 when I was 16 years old. And then I was disappointed. I said, Dad, this is a single shot. Why can't I have, semi-automatic? He said, no, you learn a single bolt action first. And then if you like that, you can later on your own get something more powerful. And I've owned guns off and on here and there. It depends on where I've lived and under what circumstances. And I don't mind guns. I actually like them, okay? But I don't believe that somebody has to have a bazooka for home defense. I don't agree with that. I don't believe in the unregulated market for guns. I believe, again, that guns should have a universal background check program. We should have biometric locks on them so that kids cannot grab them, or bad guys, the wrong people, and accidentally or deliberately shoot others with it. I believe that people should be trained on a regular basis to shoot their guns. In some countries, like the Czech Republic, in order to buy a pistol, you have to take it apart in front of the instructor and put it back together. That most people don't even know how to do who own a pistol. And you have to prove that you can shoot straight and that you know how to shoot. I think that's a responsible approach. Just like if you're going to get a driver's license for a car, you have to pass a test to prove you can drive it first. Hello? Same with flying an airplane. A gun is no different, because we're talking about something that can kill another human being or an animal or whatever. It is a weapon, no doubt about it. And I don't support hunting, for example. If I want food, I'd rather buy it from a store. I've just never enjoyed killing animals. If those people like to hunt, fine, to each their own. So those are my views on it. I think they're not far right. I think they're not far right left. I think they're hopefully grounded in logic. I think I can defend them. Who wouldn't want a biometric lock to keep your gun safe and you safe and your children safe? My God, if you have it on your iPhone so that nobody uses your phone but you, why wouldn't you want it on a gun? To me, it just makes common sense. And that is what is lacking in this circus debate of here we go again with another mass shooting, a politicizing of it. And let's be honest, the media, who hates Donald Trump anyway, even when he's right, there was an analysis published yesterday that only 5% of the media coverage of him has been positive lately. That's not an accident. That's a deliberate conspiracy. And I'm not a pro-conspiracy type by default. I tend to be very skeptical of conspiracies. I've exposed many false conspiracies, like Kennedy's murder and the Roswell cover-up and MJ-12 and all this other nonsense. So here the media, which is pro-gun control, is itching to find anything to criticize Trump over, even when he's right. And now they've been handed a free gift from this tragedy and mass shooting. And shame on anybody, regardless of who it is, for trying to politicize a tragedy like this. Now, speaking of shame on somebody, let's talk about Puerto Rico real quick, and then we'll do it before the break and then after the break. We have the mayor of the capital city of Puerto Rico, San Juan. She criticized Donald Trump for not doing enough to help her. And she said there wasn't any U.S. aid coming in, even though she made that remark standing in front of pallets and pallets of aid from the United States. You can't make this stuff up. Well, it turns out that she's a big donor to Hillary Clinton, surprise, and of course a hardcore Democrat. And now that Trump is there with the First Lady in Puerto Rico, she's suddenly la kissy kissy, and she's going to attend his event and, bask in his glory. That's the very definition of hypocrisy. What she should have done is what Trump said, and that is focus on local efforts to help better. It is not Trump's fault. It's not America's fault that Puerto Rico remains a backward state. They've been in a recession for 10 years. They've declared bankruptcy, and then a hurricane hits them, and they're located in an area where a hurricane strikes about once every 4.3 years, if you do the math on its past history. So Puerto Rico is a failed state. They want to join the United States to get free money, and of course the Democrats want them to join because they'll get a lot more voters. So those are the nasty politics behind what has been a disaster. Puerto Rico couldn't handle a hurricane even if it were located in an area that were safe from them. Again, it is a failed state, and this disaster has driven home its failures. Its infrastructure has rotted because they've deliberately ignored the problem. Nobody caused Puerto Rico's problems except itself, but that's Puerto Rico. Okay, we will come back in a moment after this station break here on Cal's Corner here on the X Zone Radio Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Ancient prophecies, legends, and current events indicate we're entering a high-frequency era supporting enlightenment. During expansive times, old rules fail, necessitating access to the ever-shifting currents of life for guidance. There's an ancient form of shamanism through which we can obtain the information we need. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with a great new provision for those interested in spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow, is an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes designed to guide and support you and your family during these times of transition. Embrace the magic. Empower your life. Study Galactic Shamanism at findyourpathhome.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to segment 3 here on Kal's Corner radio show here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Again, the executive producer is Rob McConnell. I'm Kal Korff, and I'm your host. All right, so we've talked about Puerto Rico. We've talked about the tragedy in Las Vegas, the mass shooting. And by the way, one very disturbing trend in American mass shootings is that they tend to occur in groups of 2 or 3. There are what are called copycat cases, and this is something that does happen with serious major crimes. So if I were law enforcement and had half a brain, and I'm not an expert on this, but even I notice this pattern, I would be on the lookout for some crazed copycat killers that might show up in the next week or so. Hopefully not. I hope that doesn't happen. But what I also hope is that our beloved government does the responsible thing, but there's no credible evidence that they will, because, to be blunt, they're Democrats and Republicans. When you can expect them to do the right thing and they start doing the right thing, maybe one day their approval rate will be higher than 13%. And that's at its highest. Before the election, it was down to 7%. That's disgraceful. Okay, let's switch subjects now and talk about something that I have started to talk about in the past week or two, and there's a reason for it. The subject is called Agenda 21. Now, I want to stress to you again that I am not the type of individual who is predisposed towards believing in conspiracies. In fact, I believe with a lot of these wild claims that you have to follow a simple piece of logic called trust but verify. I also believe in the maxim that what is necessary is always wise. Even if we may not like to do it, if it's necessary, it is the wise thing to do. So what I'd like you to do after you hear this show is please Google, search on the internet, Agenda 21. When you do that, you will find some very horrifying things that absolutely explain the craziness and stupidity and the power grab that the United Nations has been getting away with for a couple of decades now, despite the coming and going of various presidential administrations in the U.S. In fact, you'll find that Agenda 21 became legitimized, for lack of a better term, or got a full head of steam during the presidency of Bill Clinton, when Al Gore was vice president, because Al Gore is a key contributor to the Agenda 21 doctrine and document. Now, what is Agenda 21? Well, it's thousands and thousands of pages of a blueprint for one world government. That is, the United Nations wants to take over key parts of what are the duties of autonomous nations around the world, so that we have a big superstate, a global single power that pretty much tells you what to do, and of course takes away some of your individual liberties and freedoms. Now, I would argue, before getting into some specifics here to prove what I'm saying, so that you know this is not left-wing, crazy, stupid conspiracy nut stuff, I would argue that it's possible for liberties and freedom to be preserved and maintained while advancing the human race. The first objective I have to not Area 21, but Agenda 21, is that it is one world government, all or nothing, take it or leave it. We know what's better for you, and trust us, even though we're taking away some of your liberties, many of your liberties, let's all just suck up and agree to this. Now, the proposed takeover of Agenda 21 of what would be the individual rights and duties of states, sovereign states presently, would make any communist, hardcore communist, let's say Marx or Mao proud, because this document goes way beyond even what they imagined. And its chief architect is a man who passed away last 2 years ago. He was a Canadian named Maurice Strong. He was a good friend of the previous prime minister earlier, Mr. Trudeau. The current prime minister, of course, in Canada is his son. His father was a good friend of Maurice Strong's, and Maurice Strong, of course, has been a partner and a good friend of Al Gore. So what happened is, at the Rio summit, this was a couple of decades ago, the United Nations put forth a blueprint to basically use their influence and a bunch of money from the West to shift it to Asia, Communist China and India, to mention two specific countries, because they saw that based on population dynamics alone, plus globalization and outsourcing from the West to the East in Asia, that this would be the big growth space. And Maurice Strong himself is an avowed socialist. His relative, who was an inspiration to him, Anna Strong, you can Google her, please do. Her name is Anna Strong. You will see that she was a hardcore communist who knew Joseph Stalin personally. She also knew Chairman Mao personally. There are rumors that they were even involved romantically, because Mao had a lot of mistresses, like many good communist leaders do. And she was a hardcore apologist who furthered Soviet propaganda. She even accompanied the Red Army as they, quote, liberated Poland and Germany. And of course, she omitted the fact that when the Red Army swept back into Poland on its march to Germany, that they killed thousands of people who might pose a threat to them, because they knew they would take over Poland and never let it go. And of course, as the Red Army was going into Germany, where they just committed atrocities against German women especially, there were hundreds of thousands of abortions in the first couple of years after the war ended because of mass rape, which was a former institutionalized program that the Russians, and with Stalin's approval, had unleashed on the German people. Anna Strong was all there, and of course she doesn't mention any of that, even though she witnessed a lot of this, because she was a hardcore apologist, communist, and socialist who was an American, and a lot of her books were published later out of Seattle. So when Maurice Strong was growing up, he found inspiration from her. He later partnered with her brother Tracy when he became a big shot in the YMCA. And if you look up Maurice Strong, and please do, again, his first name is Maurice, and then last name Strong, Strong. Here's a man who was born into poverty during the Great Depression. His father had lost his job. His mother ended up in an insane asylum because of the hardships. And by getting to know the Rockefellers, and by doing people at the UN as it was starting a favor, he ended up being probably its most powerful bureaucrat. And he had his hands in every pie you can imagine. If you look at the number of titles he got, the number of honorary doctorates and degrees, you can see that there was a pattern in his behavior. He would basically start up some private enterprise that allowed him to function and take advantage of and exploit and financially embezzle any company or bureaucratic connection it had to it. He was involved in several companies that went ahead and went bankrupt, and of course he was able to sell a stock before that. All of this is available in the public record. I write about it in my new book, which exposes the false climate change claims of Al Gore. It's a couple hundred pages in length, and the entire court documents nailing Maurice Strong are in there, as well as an expose of him. That's why I can talk about some of this material. So you have heard, and there's a reason I'm mentioning all this background info. You have heard conspiracy nuts. We're talking hardcore, delusional conspiracy nuts talk about the Illuminati and one world order and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers taking over everything. There is actually a grain of truth to some of that. It's not as pervasive as they blow it up to be. But the fact is that Agenda 21 was a universal charter for the future path of the human race, as envisioned by Maurice Strong, Al Gore, and other contributors, to go ahead and globalize everything and to shift a lot of the wealth from the West to the rest of the world, to Asia and Africa, to bring them up to speed at the expense of the West, And then the idea is that when everybody has an air conditioner and a computer and a car and a house and a mortgage and 5 kids and 2 dogs and whatever makes everybody happy, that the world will be a much better place. The document also specifically says, ironically, that the current way, the Western way of living, was not sustainable. Therefore, you would have to give up your air conditioning unit, or to help replace the damage that you were doing to the environment, you would buy what are called carbon credits. So what happened is Al Gore worked very feverishly to play a key role in getting 2 key pieces of legislation passed in the U.S. when he was vice president. One is they signed a law into effect that suddenly legitimized overnight NGOs to give them formal input into the U.S. government as far as how to shape or conduct its official policies. And all of a sudden, thousands, over 10,000 NGOs signed up and were officially registered. And of course, they made sure they were registered with the UN. The UN loved it because all of a sudden you had people that would be save this, save that, help this, help that. All these different NGOs, they would of course get a lot of money from the US government and other countries, especially the European Union. They would become legitimized. They would be offered a seat at the table. And a lot of laws began to get passed with their formal input. So that's one of the first basic dynamics that Al Gore was chiefly responsible for in getting these laws passed. A second one was also interesting in that they knew that there would eventually be this so-called cap and trade legislation. So what did Al Gore do? Because he loves and is concerned about the environment, he went ahead and was one of the people behind the old Chicago Carbon Credits Exchange, which went bankrupt later. Of course, Al Gore got out of it, and the entity was sold for some $600 million, of course. So Gore has had a pattern of setting something up, making a lot of money on it, and then cashing it out and getting it rich. I find that of probably the most recent example of what I think is brazen hypocrisy on Al Gore is when he sold his interest to an Arab country in the TV network to the Arabs, who of course love fossil fuels. They know their days are running out to support them. But if Al Gore was so concerned about the environment, the last thing he wants to do is to sell a business to somebody who's busy polluting the environment. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not Al Gore, thank God. But if I was so against something, the last thing I would do is sell it to whatever I'm against. It just doesn't make any logical sense. But that's what Al Gore did. So what happened is there was a man named Barack Obama. He was a senator back then, and he worked with the Joyce Foundation to go ahead and approve a grant of several $100,000 to get the carbon credit exchange going. And then, of course, there was cap and trade legislation that was supposed to be passed by Congress. And then, of course, Al Gore and those guys pumped their money in there to go ahead and start to make profit. And then when Al Gore bought carbon credits to offset the damage he was doing to the environment, since his carbon footprint was many times bigger than most people on the planet because he's Al Gore, he would buy the credits from his own company. That's mighty convenient, isn't it? It's also hypocritical. And then, of course, Al Gore got out of it and cashed out and laughed all the way to the bank. So what happened is cap and trade legislation did not get passed. It got killed. And at that point, the market collapsed. And this artificial idea that you're going to buy offsets because of how much you do damage to the environment, none of that is based on science. If, as Penn and Teller exposed in a very good episode of their series, whose name stands for BS, won't say it on the air here, what they did is they had a phony person go around and do a survey and said, you've done this much damage to the environment for that cup of coffee you had. Please give a donation and you can help offset the damage you've done. And people blindly gave. They weren't even thinking about it. And none of it was based on science. So we'll come back for the final segment of Cal's Corner radio show, where we'll go ahead and wrap this up on this and a few other subjects.
The Earth is under ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show, here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
What is truth? Historically, we viewed things as either being true or false. Now, as we enter a more expansive era, we find the question is not, is it true, but rather, how true is it? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of The Science of Magic Radio, a syndicated, internationally broadcast radio program dedicated to uncovering this ever-expanding truth. Join me daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview today's leading experts from the fields of science and magic to uncover the hidden truth between the lines drawn in the sand. What we unearth in our discussions is not only amazing, but totally unprecedented. You won't want to miss a single episode. In service to our listeners, past episodes can always be found on our website with our compliments at thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the last segment for this episode of Kal's Corner radio show here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff. I am your host, and of course our executive producer in Canada is the legendary one and only Rob McConnell. By the way, I want to congratulate Rob on an incredible achievement he has made. He has managed to get his pet dog, an adorable 6-year-old dog, that's my understanding of it, to earn 2 basic pieces of paper. One is the dog has just earned a PhD, which is fascinating. And secondly, the dog has become an ordained minister, that's my understanding, with the Universal Life Church. So congratulations. I'm sure many pet owners are jealous, and Rob can explain why he did what he did, but obviously he has an overachiever pet. And if you can have that in life, that's great. But the message here, I think, and I think Rob would agree, is that this shows how stupid some things are out there. But unfortunately, they're rampant. But I'll let Rob talk about it. But I got the message from him earlier today, and now I'm proud to say that I have a friend who has a dog that is highly educated and has 2 degrees more than I do. Okay, let's try to wrap this up here. All right, so again, we've talked about Al Gore. I want you to please Google Agenda 21 and look at the details of how it basically wants to control your life and the lives of everyone on the planet. It wants to create a super state. There are even parts of this document that talk about getting rid of the police and military so that the United Nations can fight all your battles for you. Now, if that doesn't make people feel nauseous, I don't know what does. So what happened is Maurice Strong died in 2015. He was forced to resign from the Iraqi Oil for Food program because he had received a check for nearly $1 million after first denying that he had ever saw it. But then they pointed out on court that his signature was on the back of it, and that was made out to him. And then he said he didn't know that the money had come from Saddam Hussein. Yeah, right. Well, he was buddies and business partners with Tong Sung Park, who was a criminal. And of course, he was indicted for embezzling money and illegal activities concerning the Iraqi Oil for Food program and other scams over the years. Mr. Strong, because he loves humanity and cares about it, also helped North Korea further its rogue nuclear weapons program, which, not coincidentally, while Mr. Strong had his hands in that pie, North Korea became a nuclear power. Now, Mr. Strong, after he resigned from the United Nations, he went ahead and, not coincidentally, he claims it was a coincidence, went ahead and moved and left to Beijing, China, where he, of course, had many connections, and he was involved very much so in helping the Communist Chinese government take advantage of carbon offsets. And that, of course, gave the Communist Chinese Party countless millions of dollars, exploiting what was always a fraud at that time. And then before the whole market collapsed, China laughed all the way to the bank. And the lesson that we should learn about the Communist Chinese, which nobody's listening to, except maybe people in India, but there's not enough people in India who really care, unfortunately. The lesson is that money from the West has fueled a resurgent and aggressive China. It has gone from being a paper tiger to being a dangerous tiger, a deadly one. And as was disclosed today in the media in a wonderful article by the Washington Times top-rated investigative journalist, longtime expert on China, Mr. Bill Gertz, there have been documents that have been leaked from the Chinese military that show that they plan to invade and take over Taiwan by the year 2020. The details of the battle plans are so precise that you know exactly where they're going to land. And let me give the short version of how they intend to take Taiwan. First of all, the Communist Chinese view Taiwan as a renegade province, even though it isn't, because the two, Taiwan and China, are separate countries. Culturally, the two people have grown apart from each other. And China, of course, wants that territory back. It also would give it greater control in the area and, of course, be a blow against its mortal enemy, Japan. China still hates Japan. Japan doesn't like China. And that is a long-standing grudge that culturally goes back centuries, if not thousands of years. So the short version of what the Chinese intend to do is, according to its current leader, the wonderful humanitarian-loving Xi, he says that he renewed the commitment to the 2020 plan, and what China wants to do is this. They intend to fire around 1,000 rockets onto Taiwan and go ahead and bombard targets and soften up Taiwan's defenses. They have over 1,000 warheads pointed at Taiwan currently. While they're doing that, they intend to use their Air Force to soften up the attack grounds, and then, of course, launch after the missiles have struck first in the first round for a day or two to launch an amphibious assault. They plan to land at 14 different locations along the island because the island is pretty long and about 90 odd miles wide. And of course, the Taiwanese people know that this is coming. They've been preparing for it for years. The obligations of the United States is to give Taiwan enough weapons defensively so that China will never want to attack Taiwan. But the Communist Chinese military documents clearly say that there will be a huge loss of life on the Chinese side. And of course, let's be honest, life has never been worth anything in Communist China anyway. In fact, I will tell you, as an American living in Asia, and I have now for 7 years lived here in India, I will tell you that life isn't really valued in Asia pretty much anywhere that I can see from firsthand observation, except maybe in Japan. But that's considered the Orient, subpart of Asia. In India, life is not valued a lot. You see that in the way that people drive here. Cows have more rights on the road than human beings do. And a lot of people end up killed needlessly because of Indian stupidity. I'm just being blunt with you about it. It's every man for himself here. The joke is they can't form a straight line, and they don't. And you can see in the way that they drive and just thumb their noses at the laws. In fact, they view laws as impeding their rights, even though they're common sense and logic. But that's the mentality here. And of course, when you have a system that is totalitarian capitalist, it's not really communist anymore. The version of communism in China is no longer the same as it was under Chairman Mao. They became totalitarian capitalists with the help, by the way, of key movers and shakers on the world stage, like Maurice Strong. I'm not exaggerating. Of course, life is going to be valued even less. And to me, the best way to summarize the way that the Chinese value life is to look at the massacre at Tiananmen Square. Those people didn't deserve to be killed the way they did for the cause that they were trying to fight for, freedom and democracy, and yet they were dead. So human values, human rights, human dignity, they don't mean anything in China. That's why there is no Google there. They have their own censorship. And now in China, things are so repressive that before you even have a blog and post anything, you better get it pre-approved by the Communist Party ahead of time, or you can end up in prison. In fact, there are several bloggers serving prison sentences of anywhere from 5 to 7 years. Some have been given life terms because what they published was critical of the regime. And as China continues to get its hooks into the West financially, buying up more and more of Hollywood, they've now found that the Chinese have been cooking the books on Hollywood movies. There was a audit done recently that showed that they were underreporting revenues and, of course, lining their own pockets. So now the agreement between Hollywood and the Communist Chinese government is going to be altered. That's going to take a few years of negotiation. And, of course, the Chinese will leverage what they always do, which is their huge numbers in their market. See, the issue with China is that once it becomes too big, it pretty much can dictate what it wants whenever companies focus on profit first instead of doing what's right. The irony that history will record, unfortunately, is that the rise of China and the demise of the West has been ultimately fueled by the West. I mean, let's be blunt. If companies didn't pay Communist China to build their goods really cheap, where would China be today? Where would India be today if there was no contact with the West? They would be back several centuries. There would be no phones, no air conditioners, no TV, no radio, no cars. You name it, everything that constitutes modern day life and existence would not exist outside the West if there had been no contact from the West. So at some point, the human race is going to have to, independent of Agenda 21, start a universal set of human rights and actually value those, and they must be ruthlessly enforced. Because when a person can be sent to prison for life or executed just because they criticize their leader, that's not right, and you can't tolerate it. And yet this happens in some countries. Now, I want to end this by saying one last thing. To show you that the world is changing a bit, and this is a step in the right direction for once, Saudi Arabia is now allowing women to drive. It's about damn time. I can't even begin to tell you how overdue that decision is. And when you compare Saudi Arabia to a country like the United Arab Emirates, there's no difference. Women are not forced to cover themselves in the UAE. If you want to buy alcohol, you can do that. In Saudi Arabia, you got to do all that stuff illegally. So Saudi Arabia is now trying to follow the UAE's footprints and do the stuff right and copy what they're doing, and it's the right thing to do. Now, what will happen eventually in the Arab world, over time, it'll take a while, is eventually they'll recognize Israel's right to exist, because Israel does have secret relationships with many Arab countries, but for political reasons, they're not publicized. And Saudi Arabia deep down knows that Israel is not a threat to its existence. They're not even an enemy, but you have these radical jihadi nuts, which of course have always hated Jews and anybody who doesn't agree with their twisted form of Islam. It's not a Jewish specific thing. It's like bin Laden would say, if you convert to my form of Islam, I forgive you. He said this to George Bush. If you don't, then of course we want to kill you. All right, thanks for joining us on this episode of Cal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff. We'll be back again next week. Thank you.